How's it going? Just gonna bring that music down a little bit right here. I'm a bit disappointed. That glowing light you're seeing here is meant to be the Fnatic neon, and it just looks like a massive blur. Uh, Let me see if I can fix this. Color space. I don't know. I'm trying a bunch of stuff here. Configure video. Will this do anything? Don't think it will. Maybe if I... No, brightness is not it. Contrast? No. Sharpness? Nope. Saturation? Nope. Backlight comp? Nope. White balance? That doesn't seem to want to move. Gain. What if I reduce? Nope. Well, that's a bit disappointing. Exposure. Nope. Focus. Zoom. Doesn't seem to be changing anything. That's the focus. Okay. Well, I'll find another way, surely. But this is a bit disappointing overall. But anyways, welcome back, guys, to another episode of the podcast. We have week 1 that's just finished, the introductory weekend of the LEC. And I have to say, it was quite an exciting week to start with. The teams overall looked much stronger than what I expected. If you guys watched the tier list last week, obviously you will have seen that I've put clear SA tier, and the rest of the B, C, and D tier for me was a little bit behind, but I've been proven wrong on many of the teams that started this week. So we'll have a look into the LEC standings and everything that's happened. Obviously, Fnatic start that could have been better, bit disappointing. Could have been a 2-1 start, ended up being a 1-2 start. I'll go over what happened, obviously, during those first 3 games and the predictions. You guys are currently kicking my ass in the predictions. I'm going to say it right now. I try to be a little bit spicy with my picks. Never again. Never again. I'm picking obvious winners now. That's how it works. Anyways, guys, let's jump right into the action with what happened at the LEC. LEC standings right now. We have 2 undefeated teams with G2 Vitality, 2-1 teams with Koi, Mad Lions, a big group of teams with SK, XL, BDS, Heretics, and Fnatic at 1 and 2. And the almost a traditional, I feel, at this stage, last Tralis. Hello, Juvenile. Thank you for joining me on the stream right now. We're talking about the LEC and the usual top and flop of the week. The obvious first one I'm going to start with is G2, who's giving us very clear signs of 2019 versions of G2. That is being able to pick whatever the hell they want, looking strong in every lanes that they have, and obviously having a good synergy, good connections from the get-go. And I'll be very honest, I thought that, what's his name, Hansama, maybe would take a bit of time before getting into the LEC groove following his stunt and NA with Team Liquid. And I was wrong. I was wrong. He's was super strong this week. Um, Caps feels definitely liberated when he's playing Zac mid, and I think the obvious standout is Yike coming in and just setting himself as one of the best junglers within the first week. Um, when you bring in obviously a rookie with from the ERL into the top leagues, you never really know how it's going to happen, right? Like I mentioned last week, it was a big debate of is he going to be one of those ERL players that's just going to be good enough, or is he just going to, be where he belongs, be able to play with the top teams and face the top teams and fit into that G2 roster. And clearly, it seems that they have the right pieces. Only Mickey maybe stands out as the person who's not been playing at the highest level yet, but he's still been very valuable to the team, especially when he brings up the Ashe and it's just arrows galore to bring in all that utility and those stuns to his team. So far, G2 definitely looking like the favorites. They're going to be facing Vitality next week, who's the other undefeated team. I'll talk about them a bit later, obviously, for personal reasons. And yeah, just basically very little to say about G2 so far. Apart from maybe their first game against Excel, which I think was a very big back and forth overall. They were the more resilient team and the better team in the team fights actually. So definitely what makes the difference, and it's all about being able to continue to grow and taking that momentum. And if what they've shown right now is just a piece of what they're able to accomplish, I think they're going to be very, very hard to reach on the long term. So people are going to need to find where the shield breaks for this G2 team, and try to get into these little splits in that shield, because right now they kind of look undefeated, and there's a high chance that they have an undefeated split. Now, obviously, very smaller split. It would be a 9-0 instead of the 18-0. So the value that it has is a little bit, I would say, in the eye of the beholder at this stage, because, in a best of one circumstance, do you think that having 9-0 is an actual undefeated streak, as you would have for any other team, any other split? So I'm sure they'll be very happy with a 9-0, and then if they continue into the best of threes, best of fives, to not drop a game, then good for them, and they'll probably be one of the strongest teams going into MSI. But that's way into the distance. I'm just realizing that I've put LEC Week 8 and that I haven't changed that title since. So I'm just gonna make a quick change here, LEC Week 1, and I'm just gonna put G2 dominates as a subtitle. There you go, guys. I'm sorry, I've been running all over the place today. I came back from the gym. It was super busy. I spent God knows how many hours there just to do my own exercises, and the Fnatic light doesn't even look good. I don't know if it's probably lack of focus or something. I wish I was a good enough streamer to fix those, but I don't know. I'll see if I can find something online that allows me to have a bit more definition on this. But moving on, the other top team, in my opinion, is Mad Lions. I think I put Mad Lions on the B tier last week, if I'm not mistaken, and I feel like they played really well overall. First game, obviously. I mean, I I don't feel like they faced the hardest team. You know, they went against SK, Australis, and Vitality, I believe, was the last team they faced. And to be honest, the Vitality game was close until it wasn't really, but they did rather well, I would say, overall in that first part. First game against SK, uh, Niski was absolutely demolishing Certus on the early game. Really, it's I was quite surprised on how well Niski played on his account and how aggressive he was. Because usually, you know, he's not necessarily a carry style player, but definitely on that game, he was the one that made the difference. And on the first two games, my other surprise was definitely Helisang. Helisang, who didn't hard into as he would do when he was with Fnatic, but played well, played rather, I wouldn't say too conservative. Did much more roaming than he has done with us in the past split. So I feel like they've unlocked him a bit more. And obviously, when you pair up with Elyoya, who's a good mechanical player and very smart player as well, um, definitely gives them good results to start with. Um, Not much to say about their top laner, Chasey. I don't think he necessarily stood out, in my opinion. He played well overall, but you know, I'll need more games to see if he's that much of an upgrade over Armut. Karzi played rather well as well. It wasn't the coin flip bot lane that everyone was kind of predicting this time, where it's like, oh my god, you know, it's going to be all over the place, and we don't know what they're going to do, and they're going to, you know, give 10 kills at 6 minutes or anything. I think, was it the game against Australis or Vitality, where they had quite a dominant laning phase, but no, I think overall, Mad Lions doing well so far. Had an easy start to the split. As they're going into week 2, I believe it gets a bit harder on their schedule. They're facing Excel, Koi, and BDS. I think 2 out of those 3 games are definitely going to be challenges for them. Even BDS to some extent. If BDS went 2-1, I was actually thinking about putting them in the top teams, because I think I put BDS in like D tier, and you know, they've played well. They've let Adam be on his pocket picks, his Olaf and his Darius, so maybe that will draw specific bans going into the next games. But yeah, BDS wasn't too bad, but still, they could have gone 2-1 had they won this game against Excel, which was just bad game from both teams. But I'll talk about Excel in a moment. Going into that comment into the chat saying Vitality is overrated, a little bit of yes, a little bit of no. That's why I've still put them in my top, but I've shrunk their logo a little bit, because I put them in my top, but it's a very tentative top for them, because they should have lost the game against Fnatic. 100% Fnatic gave them the game, got a bit too healthy on the Baron take, shouldn't have fought this, shouldn't have chased, and then it just kind of crumbled afterwards. Their game against who was it that they played on the second day? Against Team Heretics, kind of the same situation. Team Heretics was ahead. Vitality just, I feel like, plays the team fights a bit better overall. But yeah, that's the issue. It's like their early game is very bad, and if teams are able to close the games against them, then it's kind of done. The game against Mad Lions was a lot of back and forth, somewhat even, and then Vitality just took over. I really think that Photon is saving their ass in the top lane. He's gotten a few solo kills. Bo for me, I don't know. Everybody has been like fawning over Bo. I don't think it's been as impressive as everyone was touting. I was expecting him to just pick Graves, dominate games, and be like 10-0, and just just be untouchable. That's something I've seen more from Yike than from Bo, to be honest. Bo played team fights rather well overall, but it didn't come forward as someone who's an absolute genius to me. Like, oh my god, he's like, apart from the level 2 cheese gank in the bot lane that he did against Fnatic, uh, I've I've not seen something that incredible. Bo is a fancy Marang. I mean, it could be. It could be. Like, obviously, everyone was like, oh, the solo queue terror. Solo queue terror. He's just 1v9s, 1v9s. I don't know. Maybe they're still working on their synergy, stage confidence whatsoever. But I don't know. So far, Bo is technically undefeated in pro play. He got a bit lucky. He could have lost the game against Fnatic. He could have lost the game against Team Heretics. What I would say would really stand out for Vitality is their capacity to get back into the game somewhat and playing team fights rather well. So right now they're undefeated with G2, but going into this weekend they'll be facing G2. So I think they might get exposed rather hard, unless we see another version of Vitality that's much more structured, stronger in the early game as well. But I don't feel it. I don't feel it personally. I don't know what you guys think, but I feel like if we compare the two undefeated teams right now, G2 and Vitality, Vitality is undefeated despite their games, So I think they'll come at least across one loss against G2, and then we'll see. I don't remember the rest of their schedule for this week. I know G2 is on Monday, I believe. Yeah, it's on Monday, and before that they face SK, which should be rather easy for them. And well, okay. So they have an easy schedule roughly for them. So could be another 3-0 week, could be a 2-1 week, either or, But I'm still waiting for a bit more from them. Right now, the standout is Photon. Moving on to our flops of the week. Looking at the expectations that I had personally, the only one that stands out for me is XL, which is playing way, way, way below expectations. Now, people that say that one thing that XL lacks is, how do you call it, a very aggressive carry lane, which when you look at the players, it's true that there's not necessarily like a hard carry player within that roster. Odoamne, usually will play the tanks. I mean, he can play the carries, but I feel like he has more of a tendency to play the tanks, play the front line. VTO, again, hasn't been unlocked this week, I feel like. He can't dodge any skill shot. Yeah, exactly. Is the that's actually a very good comment. Is that the mechanical value that VTO has showcased in prior seasons, I was expecting it to be like a big addition to XL this season, and it hasn't been there yet. So I know that there's been interviews where they've said they're still kind of figuring out how to play together, that the synergy isn't there yet. When you look at that roster, there's very few people who have played together prior, so you're kind of putting pieces of a puzzle and trying to make it fit. So it's 4 players coming in, so obviously it might take a bit more time to fit in, but still, XL was very close to go 0-3. If any of you guys watched the BDS XL game, BDS was playing rather well and they were ahead, and they kind of misplayed. I believe it was around Baron at some point, and XL, the veterancy of the XL players made them able to get back into the game and close out the game, but it wasn't really clean so far. So XL, yeah, disappointing for sure. I really wish we get to see their potential because, in my opinion, they were one of the most exciting teams going into the season, and they haven't lived up to that standard right now, to that expectation. So right now, obviously, week 1, the standings aren't done. Very close, 3-0, 2-1, 1-3. Only Australis, obviously, with a very bad start. I haven't put them in the flop team because, again, I wasn't necessarily expecting much from the Australis team with the changes they've put in. 1-1-3, is I don't know if he's necessarily the best player, but that doesn't say much from this Australis team that just can't seem to find a way to play correctly overall. So yeah, that's kind of my analysis of week 1 so far. I know there's going to be some amazing games coming into week 2, and that's going to start to shuffle the standings a little bit. It's going to put a lot of pressure into the last week, which will determine the top 8. So yeah, exciting games so far. Exciting teams as well. I don't think there's like a clear like top 5, bottom 5. I feel like anyone can fit in there. So yeah, I'm hoping to see more actions and more teams fighting harder than what their current ranking is showing. I'll say it that way. Speaking of which, our good boys at Fnatic having an unfortunate start, I will say. Actually, very quick before we move on to Fnatic, something I wanted to point out was Evi's start with Team Heretics. He's probably one of the best player on that team. My eyes were on Jack Spectra. Jack Spectra, apart from maybe playing 1 or 2 team fights really well, in terms of his positioning and his aggression, I think Evi overall is their best player, and I'm surprised that he's able to compete so well. Coming from Japanese league, but that just wanted a little bit of a shout out to him. I really like his personality, so yeah, just thought I'd talk about him real quickly. Back onto topic, Fnatic. Fnatic start 1-2, could have been 2-1. Sucks that we lost the Vitality game. It was so well played overall until that greed, I would say, overall that they had when chasing. And I mean, it showcases good team play, I would say overall, and good macro over the 3 games. Good macro, apart from obviously the G2 game, but the control over Drake Souls, over Herald, has been overall very positive in my opinion. And the other aspect is, I think our drafts are amazing, really really good. Like, even you can think, oh no, the G2 game draft was disgusting. Trust me, if we had played to our winning condition, which was just farm and scale, it's like the Peaky Blinders memes, like no fucking fighting, and the moment they get face to face with the opponent, they're like, let's fight against a Draven, against a Viego, like early game skirmisher advantage champions, and very high scaling as well in the Draven. Like, well, if that was a scrim game, that game would have been paused and terminated. It's like, yep, let's go next game. We were the fact that we were still able to somewhat fight despite the absolute stomp, but the stomp wasn't because they played well overall. It was just that one action, and it was very hard to come back from it. Just one misplay, and seeing the level at which G2 is playing, you just get punished on the instant. So it's a bit disappointing because, again, the drafts are amazing, and the fact we're not able to execute is such a missed opportunity. It's like we finally get a good staff that is just giving us the absolute cream of the crop in terms of drafting. We have all the tools to either disengage against hard engage comp, or to scale to go into the late game and dominate, or to have hard poke like Snowball of Death. Snowball of Death, Death Ball. Why am I saying Snowball of Death? It's because it's winter, that's why. Absolute Death Ball drafts like we had against Koi, where you can't get really close to our side of the map, or else you just get hit by saplings. And now that what's his name, Maokai builds Demonic Embrace, well, you just get burnt all over and you lose a quarter to half of your HP for just daring to get into your jungle. So yeah, I want to say that we just need better execution. It's clear that the synergy isn't really there yet. I think what's his name, Razork spoke about it during an interview, is that they're not necessarily on the same page. But despite that, I'm not going to talk about G2 game because that's really a standout game where you can't really analyze the level of the team. But Vitality and Koi game, the early game wasn't great, but objective control was very good. Most of the lanes were doing well. Even Wunder, when he was getting hard focused on his Gragas, still managed to be relevant. Very good vision of the game, for instance, when he saw that Larson was trying to realm warp during a team fight around Drake behind Fnatic with Trimby, who was on Rakan, manages to hit his cask to displace Trimby so he doesn't get into the realm warp, and then they can just front to back into that little corridor into the top side of the jungle and play super well. Obviously, we had Reckless back on his Sivir, so that's always like a winning pick. And there's a bit two sides to this, in my opinion. Is that I'm happy that Reckless had a very good game on his Sivir and finally showed what he's capable of, because he's been under insane criticism for the first two games. It's like everybody wants his head, like bring back Upset, blah blah blah. Why'd you get rid of him? It's like, do you think that putting Upset in there in those same scenarios makes us win the game? Oh, but he carries. It's not solo queue, guys. You have to take that out of your mind. This is not solo queue. If it was solo queue, Bo would be 1v9, it'd be 20-0-10 KDA, and the games would be finished at 20 minutes for Vitality. But it's not the case, is it? So that's the same. Upset has been a carry for us, but when he has the right tools around him, it's not because you have the same players with you that necessarily they're going to play the same way. Look at Koi. Koi aren't as dominant, even though they still have the best, what was the best bot lane last year with Comp and Trimby. Are they demolishing all the bot lanes right now? Or is the same form with Malrang and Larson absolutely demolishing their opponents? No, because they have Shigenda in there. It's a new meta. You have to relearn to play together every year. So Maggie Felix is solo queue prodigy, but a pro play failure. I mean, there's so many people who are great in solo queue, and who can't fit into pro play. I will say Mike Felix is a bit of an odd one out because the few times he was in pro play individually, he was very good, but never managed to go, you know, as far as his personal prowess would allow. I think there has to be a whole debate around the Maggie Felix example, but I get what you're saying, and that's exactly it. Is that you can't just say, oh, this player was very good for us. We're just gonna, if we just put him back, all our problems are solved. Like, there's layers to the complexity of a team in pro play, and so if you're one of the people watching this right now and you think, oh yeah, we just need to put Upset back in, and we're back at the top, no, and stop thinking Reckless is a bad player because he had a shit year in G2 and he had to play in the LFL. LFL is a very competitive league. He won EUM and he won LFL Spring. He still got some trophies in the bag, and he knows what he's capable of. At the same time, you also have to consider that Reckless has always been able to perform at the top when he was in Fnatic. So I don't know, maybe it's his comfort zone or anything. So far, he's played rather well. There was just this blunder in game 2, and that was it. Like, if we were 2-1 this week, if we went 2-1 this week, there wouldn't be this debate around Reckless. But Reckless is the easy guy to pick on. Like, Upset was the easy guy to pick on last week because people have something against him for some reason because he betrayed Fnatic, or he played poorly in G2 and blah, 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 and he doesn't do whatever did. If Reckless is still able to pull out performances like he did against Koi, he's still good in my eyes, and I'm sure he's going to be able to perform well again in this week, as long as the team works well together. This cohesion, we don't overextend, we don't get too greedy because we've got a slight advantage. It's gonna be like we played against Koi. Really, Koi, early game not so well. Mid game, when we forced that bot lane, we tried to find solutions. It played on its own, and two things I also want to talk about. The first one, Humanoid, playing like an absolute god, and I'm happy that he's already playing at his maximum level, even though we're only in the round robin stage. We're only in the first part of the split. All his performances with Syndra, Azir, and especially his oh my god, Jace. I don't know, I just blanked here. With his Jace was actually pretty decent, I would say. So definitely ways to play. Even we started playing a bit more around the mid lane, which was nice to see. But I think we can actually help him snowball and just become an absolute threat. And Razork, so I don't know if you guys had the time to listen to the voice comms that just released today. Razork's calls are actually rather clean overall. He has good vision of the game as well, and clear voice within the team. So no, it's rather, I think overall it's rather encouraging. Even if the scoreline doesn't look great, I think we can still be very hopeful going into the next weeks, the next few games. Is not as bad as everyone seems to be saying. Again, we were that close to be 2-1. So if we go 3-0 next week, we're in a very good position to secure that top 8, which really is what matters, because what matters is getting onto the next stage. And then when we go into the next stage, well, it's best of threes this time. So more games, more ways to adapt to different situations. And, with the small sample that we have so far, if going into best of threes, even though that's a couple of weeks away, I'd say we're looking pretty good because we have good drafts overall. And then best of threes, that's such a massive part of being able to outdraft game after game and having that flexibility of, putting a human, picking a Jace and saying, oh, is he going to go top lane? Is he going to go mid lane? Being able to flex that. And, even for Reckless, who I'm very happy to have already seen him on 3 different ADCs. He played well on the Varus, he played well on the Sivir, the Zeri. Obviously, there was a little mishap, but the fact that he's willing to pick those champions, for me, that's already a good sign overall. Regular season humanoid. Well, that's the thing. It's not regular season humanoid. It's somewhat playoffs humanoid that we're getting so far. So he's definitely doing his part there. So no, I think if you need to take away anything from this first week, be very happy on what we've showcased so far. I'm sure that we're gonna continue to build, get stronger, and secure that top 8. I think we have good chances of winning most of our games, if not all our games, going into next week. And yeah, that's roughly it, I would say, for Fnatic on their first week. Moving on to our predictions. So as I mentioned, you guys are already sending me back 4 points. It's my fault. You guys were definitely a bit more conservative, a bit smarter, and I commend you for it. But on this first week, it's very straightforward games. What do I think of Rook's performance? I think he did well overall. His rooms with Razork, I think, were pretty decent overall. His Ashe game was fine. He did miss a few arrows, but he did his job when it came to helping Razork stealing the Baron. I think, had the game against G2 played much better, I think his Yumi would have really been a big nuisance for G2. And his Rakan game, sorry, against Vitality was actually pretty decent. I think he's not being outstanding, but I think he's played well overall. So again, we're talking about a player who's finally coming into the LEC and who's having to fit with a team of veterans. So it's a bit hard when you're somewhat a veteran yourself, but you haven't played in the big leagues. And I think he's mentioned that he's usually like the leader in a team, and usually the voice. And you're coming into a team where there's guys like Humanoid, Reckless, who are big personalities already. So you can't just barge in and say, "Oh, my time to be the leader, guys. I'm gonna talk for everyone." I think he's still trying to find his place, but I would say in terms of performance overall, he did well. He definitely didn't feel like a weak link within the team, and I feel like when we failed, the team failed together. Like, it was not the performance of one player. Like, even Wunder, when he was getting hard camped against Koi, he still managed to be very relevant. So yeah, no, I think again, team is playing well together and playing poorly together, which is kind of nice to see, I would say, instead of just having one player really stand out. That would be my comment on that. But yeah, very quickly over the predictions. First day, it's really strong teams versus weak teams, and apart from the last one, Mad Lions versus Excel. I think Fnatic versus BDS might be a close one. BDS are playing rather well, but I'm still expecting us to win. Team Heretics versus Skoy is going to be a Spanish derby, so that's going to be exciting. Mad Lions versus XL could go in XL's way, depends on how much they've improved from one week to another. But looking at current form, I think I'm going to give it to Mad Lions, and so have you guys. Moving on to the second day. Again, we roughly have the same predictions. Koi versus Mad Lions, definitely feel it's going to be an interesting one. Should be another sort of Spanish derby in a sense. Um, Again, I think BDS right now looking way stronger than Astralis. You guys are on the same wavelength, and it's kind of annoying because I need you guys to pick differently so I can actually score points. I'm not just shadowing you guys. And again, the last day, there's been obviously quite a bit of standout teams, and now that I feel like most of the big confrontations have happened for most of the first week. Sorry. Now it's just what appears to be the strong teams against the weak teams. So, BDS Mad Lions is another game where I feel could go both ways. G2 Vitality, that's gonna be the one game for Vitality to kind of prove themselves and say, nope, we're actually stronger than what we've showcased in week one, and be a bit more structured, a bit of a tougher block than they are, because G2 is definitely coming for some blood. And the Bo versus Yai confrontation is gonna be an interesting one in my opinion. So yeah, you guys have the same predictions. We've got the same ones, so scores will be the same next week. Super boring, I know, but it is what it is. But guys, thank you again for tuning in for this week's episode of Inside Fnatic's Brush. If you enjoy the content, if you want to give some feedback, all the socials are here. You can follow me on Matt Scott IFB Podcast, on the YouTube, on the Spotify if you have to travel for school or work and you want my voice accompanying you on your travel. That's your choice. I don't know. But yeah, thank you for coming in, guys. I'll see you next week for the ultimate week of regular season. And yeah, hopefully we get some good wins on the board. 3-0 would be nice. I'll see you guys. Always Fnatic. Bye-bye.